Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.
What a special Shabbat this is for all of us tonight. Before we begin, I want to say a couple of things. One is to offer special efforts that Howard Silverman and Nate Ginsburg, along with the other members of the COVID-19 committee, Michael Sternberg, Linda Blassingame, Alan Goldberg, Cole Appleman, and of course, Gil Layden, for all of the work that they have done for a whole year now, or over a year, as we've struggled with the pandemic, struggled to try to keep our members more than healthy alive in this, to try to minimize exposure, trying to work with and stay within the CDC guidelines. And to have it now where, through their efforts, we're able to be here tonight for the first time is such a special moment. And I know you share with me in wanting to say to them, thank you so very much for all that you've done. And as we prepare to enter into our celebration of Shabbat, I would like to welcome into the sanctuary both a colleague and now a new friend. Rabbi Edward Boraz and his lovely and creative wife, Maggie. Although Rabbi Boraz will formally begin his role as spiritual leader of this historic congregation in July, he and Maggie have already begun bringing this congregation into their lives. And on behalf of our congregational family, I welcome you both. And now I invite Gil to come forward for words of welcome as well.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You know, we observe the turning of the calendar in so many different respects. We have the Gregorian calendar, we have the Jewish calendar, we have a school calendar, religious school calendar, which will culminate in the confirmation next week. But we also have a calendar of a new one of dealing with the pandemic. So, and this is a turning of that calendar, we hope, and it gives us an opportunity to observe a special Shabbat in which we get to see each other literally and experience all that Shabbat has to offer together. So again, Shabbat Shalom, and it's good to see you all again.
Let's join in Shechianu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu b'zman hazeh. 7 in your booklet. Behold how beautiful it is for us to be together. Yes, let us sit down. Tonight, the words of Maya Fetayon. How beautiful, how wonderful is this day of Shabbat. Takes on special meaning because we're here together. Maya I'm ready for Shabbat. And now, as we formally welcome Shabbat, and I think we've created a beautiful home and atmosphere for Shabbat, for the Sabbath bride to come and dwell among us. I invite Patricia Silverman, our Director of Education, to step forward to light the Shabbat candles and welcome Shabbat with the brilliance and the radiance of Shabbat candles on page 1 in our booklet.
All source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we should speak into our hearts and into our lives. Bless all who enter the sanctuary in need, all who brings the offering of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts, kindness, peace, and love.
Please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishar v'zchutova, v'zivanu le'oleh, ner shem Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, Lord of the universe, who hallow us with wisdom, permitting us to enter the light of Shabbat.
Please be seated. As we continue and turn to page 8, as we continue our welcoming the Sabbath in this beautiful hymn, Lechadodi, from the Kabbalists from Shabbat. It sings and compares the Sabbath to the Sabbath bride. It's where we get, of course, that idea of Shabbat bride. Please join us, Lechadodi. Please be seated. As we turn to page 11 in our booklet, we anticipate sharing in the words which praise God, with the Chatzi Kaddish, followed, of course, with the formal praise of God with the words of the Baruch Hu. And we do so as a way of saying to God, thank you for all of the blessings in our lives. And I once again have to say, being here with you tonight in this sanctuary, in this holy place, made all the more holy because you are here, is certainly reason to give thanks to God. And so we pause for just a moment. Allow your hearts to fill with all of the various blessings that are in your life right now. And then we will rise at that time to say formally to God, we praise you. Yitkadal v'yitkadal shemei Rapa, Amen. V'yamadi brachirutei v'yamlik malchutei b'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'akala u'bizman karim v'imaru Amen. Yeshmei Rambam Mevorach, Leolam Olal Mehalmaya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar V'tromam Yinaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitalev, V'yithalal, Shemei Dekudisha, Brichu, Leilam Inkobir Chata, Vashirata, please rise. Tushbechata vanechemata, Damiran deom aveimaru. Amen. Praise Adonai, to whom praise is due forever. Praise be to Adonai, to whom praise is due now and forever. Continuing on the top of page 13, we read together. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sails of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravim. And responsively on page 14, together. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. Then this holiest of all works together, and the living language gave it form. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto L'olam Va'ed.
Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Together, Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. Please be seated. And continue with me on page 17 with the words which follow the Shema in the book of Deuteronomy and Devarim. First in Hebrew and then in English. Ve'ata et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtacha b'beitecha uv'lechtecha b'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Together, you shall love Adonai your God, all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. Take to heart these words. When you lie down and when you rise up, bind them as a sign upon your hand. Let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the posts of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Adonai Elohechem Emet. And together on page 18, let's read responsively, please, in the middle of the page. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bowed ourselves to your way. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. The song, of course, that they sang at the shore of the sea, page 19, the words of Micha Mocha, our song of freedom. Let's do that again. Sing out. Ready? בקודש נורת היא לא תוספת נורת היא לא תוספת מלכותך ראו מנך חוקי הים לפני משה ומרים לאליענו ואמרו לאליענו ואמרו Here we go. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגויו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאי On page 20 is our evening prayer. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'ha'amidenu shomrenu l'chaim, ufros aleinu, spread over us, sukkot shlomecha, your sukkah, your canopy, your blanket of peace. Join with me in the English, please. Grant, O God, that we may lie down in peace. Beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukkot shalom, aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al kol.
Baruch atah Adonai, haborei sukkot shalom. Shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael. V'al Yerushalayim v'al kol amo. V'al Yerushalayim shalom. V'al Yerushalayim v'al kol amo. V'al Yerushalayim shalom. Baruch atah Adonai, haborei sukkot shalom. Shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael. Shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael.
Thank you. That was lovely. Thank you. And now, on page 22, we come together and share in Kedushat Hayom, the sanctification of this day of Shabbat, the words of Torah itself, and with the words of the Shamru. And before we share in those in song, let's read the translation so we get the full taste, the full flavor of this beautiful passage of Torah in our mouths as we anticipate the melody that will accompany it. Together, the people of Israel shall keep Shabbat, observing Shabbat throughout the ages as a covenant for all time. It is a sign for all time between me and the people of Israel. For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth, and on the 7th day God and was refreshed.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת. לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אוהבי לעולם. כסשם ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני. את השמיים ואת הארץ. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת. לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את
And now for the central part of our service, the tefillah, ha-tefillah. I invite you to rise as we turn to page 23.
Adonai, sefatai tiftoch, ufiai ki tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise.
Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואמהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. page 25. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. Continuing on page 27, as we join together in the English. You are holy, your name is holy. And those who are holy praise you every day. Blessed are you, Adonai, the holy God. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. Please be seated as we turn to page 29 in the middle of the page and join in our prayer of avodah, our prayer of worship. Together, you are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. Your still clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. Well, let us worship to you and another. that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levadecha, b'yir'ah na'avod. And on page 32, the last blessing of the Tevilah, the Birkat Shalom, our blessing of peace. Join with me, please. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country and to safeguard a peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within his borders, health and happiness within his home. Strengthen the bonds of friendship in the heavens, all in all land. Plant virtue in every soul, and live along everything of every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamivarech et amo Yisrael v'shalom. What a beautiful blessing it is that we come into this Shabbat, knowing that there's a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, and how much more poignant this particular prayer is made all the more special, knowing that, at least for now, there is peace. Shalom Rav al Yisrael. Bestow peace, great peace, upon all your people Israel, and thereby upon the world. We pause now for silent prayer. Well, the Torah portion for this Shabbat is a continuation of the counting or taking a census of specific Israelite tribes. Now, as you may recall from last Shabbat, the book of Numbers begins with Moses taking a census of all the tribes of Israel, with the exception of the Levitical tribes, for the purpose of establishing a military structure for both the protection of the people and, but most especially, the protection of the ark, the sacred ark of the covenant. Now, sort of like Indiana Jones on a mission, right? Well, just as with last week's portion, this week continues this numbering for the remaining tribes. Once again, Moses is instructed to lift up, not so, to lift up each one to be counted. Well, in this portion, we explore such issues as the rather humiliating ritual of a suspected adulterous wife called a sotah, and the bitter waters she must drink to prove her innocence. If you're interested to hear more about this, I invite you to talk with me, Rabbi Boras, following services. Additionally, the requirements for someone wishing to pledge themselves with a vow of the Nazir, a Nazirite vow, is described. But this week's portion also provides instructions on what to do with those who may be ritually unclean and other issues of social impurity. As I was reviewing the text, I couldn't help but think of what we are going through in our own community. While we are not dealing with issues of ritual impurity, I do see some parallels for today. On the one hand, in order not to become impure by contracting the COVID-19 virus, we have, like those in this week's portion, removed ourselves from the community. It is as if everyone must suffer the isolation of the impure in order to remain pure themselves. We continue to abide by the ever-changing CDC guidelines for social distancing, which, if you're like me, after over a year seems more like social isolation than distancing. With the recent updates in these guidelines, which provide some relief to when and under what circumstances we may remove the mask, I abide by what I admit is a more conservative interpretation of these updated guidelines. Having said that, I can't help but feel discouraged by those who seem to feel that the pandemic is over and all has returned to normal. I realize that this issue of ritual purity, as described in this week's Torah portion, cannot be applied to us today because we no longer participate in those religious practices where bodily purity and impurity are relevant issues. But when we looked at the perspective of communal responsibility, it does become quite relevant. The CDC guidelines are there to protect me, yes, but they are also there to protect you from me. After a year, I believe that my adherence to them protects the health of others in the community. But what caught my attention this week was a connection between the opening event in this portion and what we later in the portion called the Birkat Kohanim, the threefold priestly blessing. Well, as I mentioned previously, in last week's Torah portion, Moses was occupied with the very involved process of taking a census of all the tribes. This week, the three Levitical tribes who are exempt from military responsibility, B'nai Gershon, B'nai Kohat, and B'nai Merari, are now to be counted. As you might expect, the Torah goes into considerable detail about the counting and about their responsibilities. So I won't. But what really ignited a spark in my mind was the word which gives this week's portion its name, naso. It means to lift up and thereby be counted. Moses is instructed, naso et rosh, to lift up the heads of the Levites so they can be counted. Imagine the scene. Now, Moses isn't standing on some huge boulder or mountain, extending his hand and counting the tops of everyone's head. You know, sort of like one little Levite, two little Levite, three little Levite. Instead, the image is one of lifting their heads so that they will somehow take a more active role in the counting process. The very act of lifting up your head says, I want to be counted. I know what is expected of me. It also implies the statement, I deserve to be one of those counted. We have this same opportunity to lift up our heads and be counted for a blessing. And as partners with God in the repair of this world, we can also help to lift up the heads of those for whom life has brought pain and sorrow, a life that has them bowed down in tears. As I mentioned, by offering the threefold blessing, we invoke the divine presence of God in our lives for blessing, most especially the blessing of peace. In the Hebrew, the text of the threefold blessing says quite literally, "May the divine face of Adonai be lifted up to you." Even God is participating in lifting up the head. Just like the Levites, we are reminded that a life of meaning and integrity starts with a very simple act: to lift up our heads and to help lift up the heads of those bowed by trauma or tragedy, so that we all can be counted in life. It is my hope and prayer on this Shabbat that each of us has reason to experience our own naso. Then, with our heads lifted up, with our eyes open to the world around us, we will see that a world of peace, of wholeness, is actually more than just a fantasy. We can make it reality. Shabbat Shalom and good Shabbos. I now invite Gil to join us as we share the threefold benediction. We miscued on this.
Oh, I didn't see it. Okay. Thank you, Rabbi.
Let's start that again.
May the Holy One bless us, keep us, and protect us. May the radiance of the Holy One of blessing shine upon us and be good and gracious to us. May the Holy One of blessing wrap us in loving arms every day of a long life, and may we bring and find and share the gift of shalom, wholeness, completeness, and peace.
Go ahead and do it.
At this time, I'd like to call Patricia Silverman to come up to the pulpit. Patricia, you have been involved with our religious school for several years. Rabbi Kaplan told me you have been an incredible educator, and he could not have done his job without the partnership you and he had. You also work closely with Linda Blassingame. Linda recounted to me many things you have done during your tenure. Here's a sampling. You created Abraham's Tent, a classroom converted to a fun, educational, and relaxing place for students. You kept us informed with updates via email, kind notes, and the bulletin, and I've seen them all. So, you communicated regularly with parents, you recruited teachers, you maintained the religious school library, you kept the school going throughout the pandemic via Zoom. You organized field trips, including Veterans Day at the cemetery, taking care of pets, and visiting assisted living facilities. You have 4 students who will be confirmed next week. You procured guest speakers, including Alan Hall, a Holocaust survivor. You had opening and year-end programs, including the recent picnic. For all that and more, we honor you for having been religious school director, for your time and dedication. With these Shabbat candlesticks from our gift shop, created and signed by Emily Rosenfeld, a talented creator of Judaica. Thank you.
And Gil, don't sit down. Now, I invite you to come back up for announcements.
And as you know, of course, this is the first Friday night that we've had as an in-person service, which we will continue to do. We also will be accessible versus Zoom. The Religious Practices Committee, chaired by Nate Ginsburg and Howard Silverman, have provided instructions for these services that can be found in the May bulletin on page 4. They're also on the Facebook page, and the links are provided in yesterday's kind notes. Congratulations are due to the confirmation class. There will be a service next Friday night at 6:15. Hope you'll come join us in the Shavuot confirmation and with our 4 confirmands whose names were worth mentioning and noting: Willis Brissman, Megan Furman, Ben Hallberg, and Gabe Sternberg. Also, please mark your calendar. On June the 13th at 1:00 p.m., we will be having our annual congregational meeting. This is tentatively set to be an in-person meeting along with availability via Zoom, in addition to the election of the officers and trustees and the proposed budget and the consideration of various reports. There will be a passing of the mantle from Rabbi Kaplan to Rabbi Boraz. So there will be an historic event, and please plan to attend. And there will be further details forthcoming. The Museum of the Southern Jewish Experience in New Orleans will be having a soft reopening on Thursday, May the 27th, and during the summer days that follow the preview period with limited capacities. Their grand opening will be held in the weekend of October the 2nd and 3rd. The Mobile Area Jewish Film Festival is starting the process to select films for the 2022 event. If you'd like to be considered, please contact the Mobile Area Jewish Federation. The Mobile Area Jewish Federation is also asking our community to join together to support Israel with an emergency appeal for funds. So if you wish to donate, you can go to the Federation website, and you can do so via the website's portal, or you can send a check. Of course, religious school is out of session, but we do have a Torah study coming up with Rabbi Kaplan on Wednesday, May the 26th at 5:30 p.m., and will be in person for those who have been vaccinated, or if not, it will still be available via Zoom. Shabbat Shalom.
As wonderful as this Shabbat experience has been, we know that for some, the experience of Shabbat is not quite as wonderfully exuberant because of illness. And so we hold them in our hearts. And as we anticipate reciting our prayer of healing together, I invite Gil to step forward again to share the names of the members of our congregation from our Misha Berach list.
This month, our prayer for healing includes Molly Adams, Paul Bradley, Mac David, Harold Fink, Eli Cromers, Robin Mayer, Murray Mushnick, Mark Shainfeld, Mark Siegel, and Harriet Scheidelman.
And before I invite those of you in the sanctuary to offer names that may be in your hearts at this time, I would like to ask those who are online if you would like to unmute yourself to share your names to bring your voice into the sanctuary with us.
Jennifer Sundberg.
Thank you. And now, those in the sanctuary, if you wish to share a name as well, please do so. Thank you.
Alice Glass, Marsha Schwartz.
Thank you. Thank you.
Marsha Buren.
With the names that we've recited out loud, I add Sidney Bronfman, Dr. Charles Page, Steve Wechter, Barbara Wechter, Carol McCullough, Bert McCullough, and Jane Adelson. On page 34, may the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit, refuah shlema. And let us say together, Amen.
Source of strength.
And now we turn to page 35 for the concluding part of our service with the adoration, the Aleno. I invite you now to please rise. Together in the middle of the page we read, "Let us now praise the sovereign of the universe and proclaim the greatness of the Creator, who spread out the heavens and established the earth, whose glory is revealed in the heavens above, and whose greatness is manifest throughout the world. You are our God, there is none else. Therefore we bow in awe and thanksgiving before the one who is sovereign over all, the holy and blessed. Aleinu l'shabbat l'adon hakol, l'atein gedula liotzer v'reshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, velo samanu kemishpekot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Please be seated. I'll be reading on page 38. In nature's ebb and flow, God's eternal law abides. When tears dim our vision or grief clouds our understanding, we often lose sight of God's eternal plan. Yet we know that growth and decay, life and death, all reveal a divine purpose. God, who is our support in the struggles of life, is also our support in death. We have set God before us and shall not despair. In God's hands are the souls of all the living and the spirits of all flesh. Under God's protection we abide, and by God's love are we comforted. O life of our life, soul of our soul, cause your light to shine into our hearts and fill our spirits with abiding trust in you. And now I ask Gil Layden to step forward to share the list. Members of our congregation, this is the anniversary, the yard site of their passing.
This evening we observe the the yahrzeit of Camille Baer, Edward Gandler, Irvin Gandler, Richard Topin, Sarah Kopelman, Gertrude Kopelman, Valdivia Vocal.
As we did with the Misha Berach, our prayer of healing, I now for Kaddish invite those of you online first to share their names aloud, to bring your voice and to bring their presence and their memories into this sanctuary with us at this time.
Inza Sternberg Abraham.
Thank you. And now I then invite those of you here in the sanctuary, if you have a name you wish to share, as I glance in your direction, if you will feel free to share that name. In addition to the names we have recited aloud, I would add the names of those whose lives were lost as we struggle with the devastating effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. We also call to mind the names of those men and women who lost their lives in the service of our country, whether through military service, law enforcement, or frontline medical workers. Although we rejoice at the recent announcement of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, we are saddened by the loss of life during this violent confrontation and send our condolences to the families of those who have died. We keep them in our prayers, as well as the names of those spoken aloud and the unspoken names we carry with us in our hearts. For all the blessed memories of each of those names and those unnamed souls, we rise as one congregational family as we join together on page 43, the words of the mourner's Kaddish. Together, Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divrach chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, v'agalal v'izman kariv v'yimeru, amen. Yehi shemei Rabbah mevorach, le'olam ololmei almaya, yitbarak v'yishtabach, yitba'ar v'troman v'naseh, V'thadar v'tale v'tala, Shemei Kudisha Barichu. Le'ela min ko birchata v'shirata, Tush b'chata v'nechemata, Da'amiran be'olma, V'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya v'chayim, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, V'imru amen. Oseh shalom v'imromav, Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'akol Yisrael, Imru Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and through our hands to the hearts of those who mourn. Ve'imru Amen, and let us say, Amen. Now we share the sweet intoxication of Shabbat with the Shabbat of the Borei Kriyagam. Please join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei Kriyagam. Amen. Join me, please. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, המוציא לחם מן הארץ. Amen. Good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom.